Okay. What a day. Rain, karaoke music, everything's going right. Okay. I wanted to make a video about tea drinking because actually I met a few ladies last night at work that I had a really good time with them, and I felt because they were not really tea drinkers, essentially, the way that I explain things while I'm working is quite different than what I seem to do when I do videos. So I thought I'll just kind of make that connection here and sort of explain myself to like I would if I was working. So tea, okay? Tea is tea until it isn't anymore. And I guess what is tea? It is a herb that you add to water, and sometimes it tastes good. So for me, that's not what tea is. Okay, tea is the material, but then there's sort of this experience that's attached to it. And I suppose I don't want to get overly like philosophical about that, but you know, wine is wine until it's not wine anymore, and it's the same with coffee and whiskey. You know, there's an elevated level of all of those things, and that definitely does exist for tea as well. So, green tea in the rain is particularly amazing, especially Chinese green tea. Now, every tea that I decide is good enough to work with and bring in for my shop, what I would do is I would kind of put them through this really rigorous testing. This is a few of those papers, but you know, basically, where am I on this thing? What I will do, like, so this was a tea that's called Jinjin Mei. This was 2020's version, I suppose. Yeah, it should be 2020. So, you know, if you brew the tea at a ratio of 1 to 70, for example, or where are we on this thing, huh? 1 to 75. You're going to get a certain result. If you brew it stronger, let's say 1 to 63, you have a certain result. 1 to 58, certain results. 1 to 50, 1 to 40. You know, if you're able to compare all of those things, and so, you know, this is done for all of the teas that I decide, and, you know, basically what, I guess the point of that is, unlike with wine and unlike with whiskey, these things come from a bottle and you can't really change them. You do have a great deal of control over your experience with coffee and tea in particular, because you have to brew them, right? And you can screw them up if you brew them poorly, and you can make them exceptional if you brew them well. And so there's, I suppose you would say there are methods to ensure that you brew them well, and there are things that need to be understood. And they're the reason why like a mediocre tea can be a great experience, and an exceptional tea can be like a lifetime, never forget, unforgettable experience. So, in order to brew tea really well, I believe strongly that you need to have a scale, because you need to be able to, with a large degree of predictability, recreate certain flavors that you're able to find. So, as I was saying to these ladies yesterday, you know, and kind of as I'm trying to allude with that paper there, certain flavors and certain aromas come out at certain concentrations, and certain textures come out at certain steeping times. And it's trying to hone in on capturing the best of each element is how you determine the tea's proper steeping time, tea's proper temperature, tea's proper ratio, right? These are all very important things for like seeing the tea at its pinnacle. And if you just want to drink tea, you know, you can just do that. I can just put tea in there, add water, and we're good. And I suppose that I have the bare minimum here of what I would need to make a really good cup of tea. Anyway, I guess let's just get started. You know, this is very hot. I would say this is probably around 80, 85 degrees. It wasn't boiling too long ago, but it's chilly outside right now. And I don't want to smash the glass, so I'm going to heat it up a little bit. there's something you take advantage of when you do pairings. It's environmental factors. So, you know, one such thing in pairings is of course the food. Right now there's no food, but right now there's rain outside. It means that outside smells very distinct. I'm sitting in the greenhouse, there's a garden next to me, there's a bunch of wet rocks right there. There's a lot of aroma going on that I don't normally surround myself with. And that's an important thing to say, because I believe that, by contrast, if my tea smelled like a garden and if my tea smelled like wet rocks, it would smell less like wet rocks than the wet rocks next to me. It would smell less like a garden than the garden next to me. So I guess by contrast, those elements in the tea are going to be hidden. And whatever else the tea has to show, aroma-wise or flavor-wise, those are going to start to stand out more. And I guess overall, that can really change your perception of a tea. So I need to make a ratio of 1 to, it's like 34.37 with this tea. Anyway, I need 9.6 grams, which is a lot of tea, frankly. This is a tea that is probably one of my best finds of the year. So it's called Maojian. It is a tea from Henan, China. It is very white looking, right? And in the realm of, I guess you would say green tea, that's really abnormally white. You know, you would expect this in a silver needle tea, but yeah, not necessarily so much in a green tea. When I found this year, I was really, you know, taken aback by how fragrant it is, and how, not to detract from China, but how similar to Japanese green tea Maojian seems to be. And you know, I really like Japanese green tea, so I think that's a really big compliment. Okay. So the one thing that I can't really account for, because my timer is on my phone, and surely that's just an excuse. There's other timers I could get, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to kind of wing this just for the sake of the video, but and I'm sure I'm going to love this anyway. But it's about 2 minutes is what I need to steep this one properly, and I need the water to be between 75 and 85 degrees Celsius, and I'm quite sure that I'm there. And even if I was a little bit hot right here in the tetsubin, while I brew this in the glass, the outside environmental air, that's going to cool this down. Okay. So, I guess even more important than, you know, the brewing of the tea, there are other things that we would talk about. So there's how you, I suppose, how you try to appreciate this, because tea is mostly aroma, and you know, everything is mostly aroma. Our taste buds actually do a lot less than we think. They tell us if things are sweet, they tell us if things are sour, salty, bitter, and then umami, I guess, is savoriness. They don't tell you that something is an apple. You know, that's your nose telling you that. And it's this system that your body has of your nose and your mouth and your olfactory all working together. It's called the trigeminal system, where I suppose your brain is, you know, given instructions of what to do with certain things. So when you get these aromas in, you get this certain flavor, let's say amount of sweetness in, you're like, oh, of course, this is an apple. And then, I guess in that, certain aromas, you can find them in so many different things, like chemically, and yeah, I would say chemically, strawberries and pineapple, they're very, very similar. And apparently, if you were to puree them, so texture is no longer a thing, and if you blindfolded somebody and you gave them pineapple puree or strawberry puree, they would have a very hard time to tell you the difference. I know that sounds hard to believe, but apparently this is quite a known fact. Well, again, brewing it this way, there are going to be certain chemicals that, through my experience, I feel like I can smell really well when we brew them this strongly. And maybe someone else is going to be less sensitive to those, and so, you know, although this is a perfect brewing for me, it won't necessarily be a perfect brewing for them. But how do you take that into account? I really don't know. I suppose that you can't. You would need to teach the person how to do this, and I guess that's the point of this video. This, I would say, for anyone else who for example, bought this tea from me, my, 1 to 34, 85, or 75 to 85 degrees of water, 2 minutes, this is like this should be a starting point for them. Not necessarily something that they, keep as a gold standard. Because, as I said, we're all different. Finally, it's starting to rain again. Lightning struck across the street, so hopefully I don't die making this. But, yeah, other things that make the experience. Like texture's a big thing. So, glass is great. Glass is inert. It doesn't add to the experience the way that clay does. And, that sounds like, how much could a clay teapot change the tea? The answer is a lot, and just as much as a cup. And, if you're using clay everything, you could really dominate the flavor of the tea, actually. And by the end of it all, it would seem like something completely different. And sometimes that can be good. I haven't really found many green teas, actually, other than this one in particular, I haven't really found other green teas that really benefit from clay as much as some oolong teas do, and yeah, some black teas do. That's pretty dark, right? And it's very cloudy. Now that cloudiness, I would say there are certain expectations that I would have based visually on this, okay? It's green, greenish yellow. That's good. It's more yellow than you might expect. If you were to brew this tea lighter, it would be greener. So this is the sort of concentration of green and the white little things floating in there that makes it look yellow like this. Temperature also will do that. The hotter water you use, of course, the more color and things like that you're pulling out of the tea. So the browner the color of a green tea is, I would say the lower the quality is, because there are reasons why a green tea can be green. The leaf is green. Why would it be brown is because you need to cook the green leaf to keep it green. And while you cook it, in China, for example, they use a wok and they fry it. So if the frying was done carelessly, then they might singe or burn some of the leaves. Now those end up in the jar, for example, and then when you brew them into a tea, those, I don't know, caramelized leaves, those burned leaves, they are the ones that give you that kind of, those brown notes. And so I would say to see a tea that, a green tea that is not brown is pretty, it's a good sign anyway. It smells like a vegetable soup in first of all, a very good way. It smells, I don't know how, logical this is to say, but I guess I've met enough people who have this, like, synesthesia thing, and I'm pretty sure that I have this as well. Certain smells correlate to certain colors. And certain, people who listen to music, they might experience this too. Certain sounds correlate to different colors. So, I mean, it smells very yellow. So I believe if I was blindfolded, I would say that, right? I would say, okay, it smells like spice and yellow pungent. So this is like, what would it be? Like there's kind of a wasabi element to this. there's kind of a bean sprout element to this. There's a sweetness, and I think that sweetness is like the sweetness you'd find in, and there's also this kind of marine aspect. So the way that my brain kind of handles that is, okay, sweet marine, this is like shellfish, this is like crab, this is like canned crab, this is like canned crab and wasabi. This is like the kind of flavor that you would experience while you're eating like a California roll or sushi in general. It's not very seaweedy. I would say it actually, yeah, in the regard to sushi, it pulls away from seaweed a little bit, and it kind of, it pulls it towards like, the flavor and the aroma of it's like jackfruit, cooked jackfruit. You know, this part of the tea drinking experience is probably the most important to me. Because I would say I'm building up a lot of expectations right now of how this is supposed to taste. Based on all of those aromas, it's fun to consider, okay, I think it's going to taste like this. And you know, sometimes you're way off. Maybe like you're totally wrong. It's not at all what you expected, which can be very fun. But I don't want to go necessarily on the record and say that's the mark of a bad tea when they don't match up with what you expect. But I suppose in every field, in coffee, in whiskey, in wine, in tea, it seems that the ones that are regarded as the best of the best, there is no disconnection of what you smell and what you taste. So yeah, I guess if you're grading for quality, there has to be some criteria, and the matching of the aroma should be one of the criteria that you're grading. And it would make sense why you would have to spend more money to get a tea or a wine that allows for that match to happen. There's this also a kind of a sawdusty woodiness. So now I can hold it, you know, pretty comfortably in my hand. This liquid is not hot enough to burn me anymore. Also a pretty good consideration. You know, people, I think they generally, they drink the tea way too fast. They don't allow it to cool down. They don't go through the, you know, can I put it like a ritual of smelling the tea, building these expectations, trying to make these mental connections of what these things smell like. This is actually, you know, if I wasn't recording, this would be very relaxing to sit here and smell this and hold this and, you know, run down memory lane and say, okay, well, I've had this before, I've had that before. When I did my initial tastings of this tea, again, like environmental factors, I do all of my tasting in as sterile of an environment as I can provide myself. I felt that this tea really reminds me of Chinatown. It really reminds me of ginseng and those kind of spice store, herbal medicine stores that have the ginseng in such kind of packaged in the window that you'd see. So those aromas, that, you know, aromas of a Chinese herbal medicine store, they're pretty distinct. And same with the aromas that you'd find in like would I put it that way? Yeah, like a Chinese vegetable aisle. You know, like if you went to Hong Kong supermarket in Calgary, the one in Forest Lawn, and you went to their green grocery section, you know, they have a lot of herbs and fruits and vegetables that you don't easily find all in one place in the city. And, you know, the first time I was there, it's like, wow, this is so cool. It's the same as if you were to go to like a, what's the place called? Okay, well, anyway, there's a Hospice de Beaune. It's in Burgundy in France. It's a hospice where, you know, people go to live out their remaining days and get taken care of until they die, basically. If I'm not misremembering, because this was quite some time ago, but there is a cellar in the basement of this building, like there are cellars in many like underground many places in Burgundy. But so cellars have this really dank, dusty aroma, and like dusty is not a word that you would it's not a word that you would not use there. And if you were to go in my basement, in my house, you know, it's as clean as any basement, I assure you. There is a dustiness in the air if you look for it. If you don't look for it, maybe you don't find it. But if you're able to start living your life looking for aromas, you will find a lot. And the whole world kind of opens up and starts talking to you all the time. The aromas of certain trees, the aromas of certain plants, flowers. You start to smell people's perfume from across a parking lot. It's a really special way to live. And it's very enriching when you can keep your mind kind of always stimulated with that kind of thought. So I don't necessarily think I've waited too long to drink this tea. It's probably like, it's lukewarm now. In this environment, in this situation, I will taste like everything there is. There's no worry about burning my mouth. There's no worry about, yeah, you know, certain aromas might be gone now, and certain flavors might be hindered by the lack of temperature, but not by much, I don't think. There is a sweetness that this has that I would not normally, well, I would not expect based on the aroma. It tastes like it smells, but it's sweeter than it smells. You can't really smell sweetness, right? You just smell things that are familiar to you, just as you can't smell acidity. But you can smell things that you've encountered that are acidic, like vinegar. You know, they say that. Actually, I disagree a little bit with what I just said. You know, books teach you that you can't smell, and you can't smell acidity, because acidity is and sourness is it's a taste. You can't smell a taste. You can only taste a taste. But I feel that when you smell something that is acidic for long enough, you will start to feel the effects of that aroma. It'll be like in your teeth. Your teeth will, for lack of a better way to put it, your teeth will water. You will start to salivate. It's if that's not being able to smell acidity, then I guess to some degree I disagree with the aroma, the sense of smell. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to go deeper into that field. I have to think about that more before I kind of have this cohesive thought, or coherent thought. I think that we are too busy, generally speaking, in our lives these days. There's too much distraction, there's too much everything. We're like living in the hyper stimulation in a way that doesn't really do us any good. There's a little bit of downtime that we have if we allow for it. Like if you drive your car to work without the radio on and it's just time to think. If you don't listen to music in the shower, you have your shower thoughts. If you allow yourself the time to contemplate things, then I feel like you get to know yourself a lot more, and you get to have you develop your own personality, basically. And I feel a lot of people, especially young people today, and I say this because I feel like I am one of those people too, or I am one of those people, but I was also trying to get away from that. And this is especially obvious when you talk about something that you don't really know a lot about, because they're not your own thoughts. They're just thoughts you've taken from somebody else, someone you watch, and then you have a conversation with someone who actually knows a little bit about that. And they say, so why do you think that way? And you would say, well, I don't know why I think that way. I mean, I guess I never thought about it. I just kind of agreed with the person that I watch. This lack of ability to reason is actually pretty scary, because that's one of our traits of being a human being, is our ability to reason and make and imagine. Reasoning and imagining, I think these are two really big parts of our life that we're starting to use less. And by doing something like this, you're able to get back to that. You're able to give yourself the time not only to enjoy aroma in its most basic sense, aroma and flavor in its most basic sense, but if this is all you're doing, if you're watching a show while you're doing this, I think that the whole point of this is killed. If you sit out in the rain and you drink tea like this, you will start to think about so many things. It's very contemplative, and I think that does your mind a lot of good. I don't know, this is starting to get really far away from, I guess, the point of the video, but I guess it had to be said in one of my videos somewhere. I guess I'm going to stop recording and actually try to enjoy this while the rain lasts. So, thanks for watching if you watched, and I hope that you might give this a shot one day yourself. You don't necessarily need to have the best tea in the world to have this experience. Okay, wait, one last thing then. This is one thing that I say to many people, but I guess it slipped my mind until now. Sometimes tea smells like tea. You're not going to have this experience with those, because you're going to smell this, it smells like tea. I guess I'm doing this wrong, I guess I suck at this. I'm going to watch a movie. There's nothing interesting about a tea that smells like tea. There's plenty of teas that do. With my amazing nose and all of the shit that goes along with being a sommelier and things like that, there's still teas that smell like tea to me. So that you wouldn't be alone in thinking that. It's just, I think in that regard you're drinking maybe the wrong one, and that's the first thing I would say. Then there are teas that smell directly like other things. This is something that I think is related to tea and related to your level of being into it, if you're distracted or not. So let's say that a tea smells like an apple, or a tea, in this case, a tea smells like wasabi, or a tea smells like this. I would say, at the very, very least, that's a good tea. Because it reminds you of something. And you're able to have that mental exercise where you're like, oh yeah, apple, or wasabi. It's kind of like sushi. Okay. Then, there's a level up from that, from the good to the great. And that would be like, okay, I've had sushi, as a Japanese wife, I've had sushi many, many, many times, right? And having gone to Japan so many times, probably more than the average Canadian person, right? There are memories in the world of sushi that really matter to me. One of them was my wife's 27th birthday. It was in Calgary. It was Sakana Grill. It was a party. We wore the stupid costume. The party costume, not stupid costume. You know, with the samurai hair. And we took pictures. I had a lot of friends there. It was a really good party. We have pictures of that day. They really matter. They matter a lot to me. There is the first time that I had natto, so fermented soybeans. Really, I almost threw up. I couldn't stomach the flavor and the texture and the aroma. That was in a train station in Osaka, like the bottom level of the train station. What station was it now? I want to say it was Fukui Station, but that can't be right. Maybe it is. That was when I was 18, maybe. 18 or... yeah, would be 18. There is my first time to go to like a really high-end sushi. So that was my wife's dad took us there, and he was like, "All right, eat this toro. This is gonna blow your mind." And we have a whole plate of it, and it's like the creamiest, most aromatic, fattiest tuna belly that I've had. You know, there are these memories of these very distinct situations where I've had sushi. And then, actually one more then would be like 100 yen sushi, basically dollar sushi. Everything is $1. Or maybe it's $2 if it's a special plate. But this is your kind of, everything comes on conveyor belts or a train. So those, I would say those are the big four for me. Memories with sushi. Okay, so let's say there is a tea that I smell, and it reminds me of one of those 4 experiences. You're smelling like, oh, this smells like the toro that I had with my wife's dad when we went to have like the best toro of my life. Okay, that no longer just smells like any toro, because I have toro almost every time I have sushi. That's the best toro. Okay, that elevates your experience with toro to a whole new level, right? So that's not a good tea anymore. That's a great tea. And again, maybe that's not necessarily the tea, that's the amount of effort you're putting into smelling the tea. But it's a bit of both. Okay. Then there is a tea quality that transcends all of that. And for me, this doesn't happen that often. When they do, they're like story inspiring, they're poetry inspiring, picture inspiring. Like there's something that you feel compelled to do with this newfound emotion that you feel, this inspiration, right? There is tea that is truly inspiring to drink. And when you get those ones, yeah, you do very interesting things with that energy. One example is so Phoenix Oolongs. I sold them last year. You know, they're hard to sell because the price is so high, especially when they get to that level. And I feel I only really want to drink them at that level, and I just don't have the market to really support them. So I'll bring them in once in a while, but usually small amounts, it'll be just for myself, really. So, the way that I would describe it on paper would be like, because I have the tea menu at Carino while I'm working there, and the line, for other things, it's like, this tea smells like wheatgrass, or this tea smells like scallops, or this and that. This one of them was Brain Aurora. Another thing was, what was it? Oh shit! Peach of Immortality. Okay, so there's a book called A Journey to the West, and the gods eat peaches of immortality to stay young for another 10,000 years, I suppose it was. Of course, I've never had a peach of immortality. Of course, to our knowledge of they're just they're a fantasy, right? They're a peach. But what would the best peach you could conceive smell like, taste like? Okay, this tea is peachy. This tea smells like the best peach that I couldn't even have a peach that tastes this good or smells this good. This must be what that book is talking about. Tasting note, peach of immortality. And then, the tea, of course, like, with repeated drinking, you're going to build up this layer of, like, tea oil, essential oil that is in the tea. You're going to build it up on your tongue. And right now, it's sitting there. It's like evaporating off of my tongue. It's going into the olfactory. I'm getting these signals of what it tastes like. There are some teas, and again, those Phoenix oolongs. The one I'm talking about is called the Fragrance of Honey Orchid. It sits on your tongue and it evaporates, and it seems like that never stops. And that's the best part about those kind of teas, is that the finish is so incredibly long, and it gives so much. But it feels like, okay, there is your olfactory. An aroma goes into that, and then it goes down your throat. With this particular tea and this particular memory, it's that aroma in the olfactory area was so profound and so filling in your olfactory area that I felt like my head couldn't control it. Actually, I felt like that aroma was like going into my brain, expanding through the olfactory, going through areas where it should be able to go, and it was like going into the brain. And it's like these bands of pink and these bands of green, like an aurora in the sky, right? You're watching, especially like a time lapse of an aurora. To be fair, I have never seen an aurora with my own eyes that wasn't on video, so I don't really know how profound the experience is actually. But even in a video, they're pretty amazing. So to have a tea that you drink it and you're like, wow, this must be what watching an aurora is like. Okay. And that's happening inside of your head. Okay. Now these kind of thoughts, they do not form when you're drinking an average tea or a good tea or a great tea. These are like in the best of the best. And you have to give them the time of day to have that thought. But if you do, yeah, the energy that you get, the creative energy that you get from them, it's so worthwhile to have. And it's so recharging for your body. You just need to be able to try to do that, right? And so the point of me having my shop is not to, I have no goal to sell good tea, or I really only wanted to sell great tea and exceptional tea, right? It's a challenge, right? Because those teas, they tend to be really expensive. And when you see Dragonwell, sold everywhere you go, and then you also see Dragon Well sold on my shop for like 3 times the price of anything that you see elsewhere, you know, you'd think like, I guess I'll buy it from elsewhere. It's not the same. I drink a lot of Dragon Well, and I drink a lot of other tea. I drink, it's not like I'm not trying to put it in a way that makes me superior or not. But I drink so much tea that exists in the realm of the good and the not good, the shitty even. These come up pretty often, and because I want to find teas that give you that effect. And yeah, my goal is to only bring them in. That's one of the reasons why tea in my shop is so expensive, is because I'm trying to find the 1%, or even the smaller than the 1% of what exists that gives you this wow. Like I've done, I don't know, so far it's what is it? It's June 4th today maybe. So the season started, I think I started drinking in mid-March. So it's been a few months. I think I'm past 70 hours of drinking tea so far. And I haven't done any of the second flushes from India. I haven't done any Japanese tea yet from this year. And I'm still 70 hours in. And again, it's mostly 70 hours of bullshit. I don't want to say it's a waste of time. It's a necessary commitment, because you really need to understand what is bad before you can understand what is good. And I think that you always need to have somewhat of a refresher to stay in the mindset, you know, okay, a tea that like for example like this, that you can go back to, and then you can say, yeah, okay, the last 30 hours of drinking tea, they were shit. Compared to this, yeah, they're nothing, right? It was the necessary evil of tea, is drinking bad tea, to understand what good tea is. And I feel if you're watching this video, you must have had tea before. And you must have had tea that is just tea. Once you try something like that, if you ever do, a lot of things will change for you, I think. I guess there is where I'm going to leave it, with the exception of one more thing. It's my thing, one more thing, always one more thing. I said it a little bit, but I think I could say it better. So forgive me for, I didn't really see the importance of saying it so strongly earlier. You know, because when I talk about the Phoenix Oolong and the Brain Aurora and all of that thing, I didn't do this tea justice, I feel. When I first had this tea, there's a very specific place in Calgary that I am reminded of, that I used to go. It was mostly a high school thing, junior high school, high school. I went to Chinatown a lot in those days, especially, and one of my favorite times of the year was Chinese New Year, because you could go to the Chinese Cultural Center, and they had, you know, it's bustling, it's full of things. You could get your name written, you know, phonetically in Chinese, even though you have no idea, you know, what the characters mean. You're like, oh shit, this says Joshua. I love it. And, you know, having those very simple things when I was a kid, they meant the world to me. Like, my name in Chinese was pinned to my wall from when I was like 15 until probably when I was 18, when I moved out. And surely I have that in a box somewhere in my basement, a box of my old things, which I'm going to rediscover one day. I digress. It's not, so in Calgary we have Dragon City Mall. It's like the nicer of the Asian malls, I suppose you would say, where it has access to all of the cool things, and like whether that's like plastic models, or whether that is finding a place where you can buy like a jade bracelet, or statues, or Chinese buns, or bakery. Or there's the Regency Palace on the second floor, a Chinese restaurant. Dragon City Mall has an aroma to me. It's a special aroma. There is another mall. It's much smaller. It's much less interesting. I would have said in the past. It's got more of that knockoff. Or I don't know about these days. I actually don't even know if it's still around. The building must be there, but I don't know how it would have changed. Dragon City Mall has electric doors. From my memory of this mall, it has manual sliding doors, which usually one of them is propped open. The interior doors are always open. Right when you walk into this little mall, you get hit with this aroma of like Chinese medicine store, someone selling vegetables, both of them at once, and you're like, oh, China, or at least how you would think the encapsulated aroma of China smells like when you're 18. So again, this is like the aroma of herbal medicine and the aroma of like fruits and vegetables, like your cabbage and stuff like that, and roots. There's this mass, anyway, these two masses of aroma. As soon as you walk into this place, they hit you, and you're like, oh. That is an aroma combination that is most strongly in my memory of that place. Okay, so from my description so far, I would put this tea in the category of, at least it's good, because it reminds you of something. Okay. Then I drank it, and the flavor, it did hit the same notes in the aroma, yes, but I suppose you would say there is an expectation of when you drink something, whether that's wine or whether that's tea, there is a point on your tongue, I guess, where the flavor hits and then like emanates from there. The tea hit me in such a weird spot. Like, tea almost never hits me in that spot, that I felt like there's a movie, what was it? I don't know what it's called. Angelina Jolie was in it. People could like bend bullets around. They were like assassins. They would shoot like around light posts to hit people. I guess that's one way to put this, but the way that I originally thought was in like, I don't know if I wouldn't necessarily know if this is a Chinese weapon or not, but I attribute it to being Chinese. At least it's Asian for sure. It's like a staff. It's a 3-point staff. I think it must be Chinese. It's like when you're building a tent. Okay, you pull the staff out, and there's like a chain in the middle of them that you could stick it all together and have a staff, or you could pull them apart and it's kind of like nunchucky kind of swinging. You could to the middle and the outsides. You probably get what I'm trying to say. My fantasy when I drank the tea, when it hit that spot, and I was so perplexed by that aroma hitting that spot, I was thinking, okay, Just walked into this little Asian mall. There's a guy in the middle. He's wearing like a kung fu uniform. It's all black. He's got sunglasses on. He's got a ponytail. He's got the 3-point staff, whipping it around. I'm like, okay. It's like a demonstration. You know, Chinese New Year at the Cultural Center, they do these weapon demonstrations. People who do kung fu classes and stuff. So this guy's in the middle of the hallway. He's doing that. Nobody seems to care. I walk in. Holy shit. And it's like that staff is the flavor of the tea. And you see it, and you're like, all right, I guess, I mean, fundamentally, it looks like I understand how this works. And then he runs up and hits you with the staff, and it doesn't hit where you think it's going to hit. And, okay, so there's a lot of, you know, fantasizing going on about the flavor that happened, right? And I think because of that, at the very least, this tea is great now, because now I'm starting to attribute it to these other fields. But I think I've dreamed so much about this tea, and how and so many flavors that it gives, that I would put this particular is called a. You know, I practiced my Chinese pronunciation a month ago, so that I wouldn't fall into the situation right now where I'm scared of mispronouncing the name of this. I'm gonna try. 石芡毛酱. For all intents and purposes of this video, this is the more expensive Maojian that I sell. I have two. And this is the one that's white, not the one that's green. The difference between them is that this one is picked a couple weeks earlier, which falls into the harvest category of this shiqian. Those are definitely, you know, articles that they're very much worth reading. Like, there's a lot of history behind this tea. There's a lot of history behind terminology. I feel like I'm much better at writing. I'm much more coherent in writing than I am in a video. This video must be already like 40 minutes. 53 minutes. I don't know if anyone will ever watch the whole thing, but if you're following me this far, if you are, I think, let me make this for you one day. It'll be complimentary on me. If you wanted to come here and sit in this little greenhouse with me, I would love to do it. Just reach out and let's make it happen. I guess that's it. Thanks for watching. Ciao, guys. Bye.